the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Cowboys. Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for tuning in. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. And joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. You can also listen to him on the Best Coast Boys podcast. Landon, what is going on, sir?
Not much. We've been saying this for a while, but we have actually arrived today because the planes have landed in Oxnard, California.
Oxnard, whatever you want to call it.
So, however you pronounce it. And we have reached the finale of our positional review because I don't think we're going to cover special teams, I assume, right? We're going to wait till.
I would love to cover special teams. You know how much I love special teams, but no, we are not going to do that.
You're a huge fan. So we've reached the end, and really we're on the precipice of starting the 2021 Dallas Cowboys training camp, and I'm excited.
Yeah, so in full disclosure, we're recording this on Wednesday afternoon, about 1 p.m. Eastern time, and the Cowboys opening press conference is going on right now. If there's anything super notable that's coming out of this press conference, we'll cover it on Thursday's show. Generally, Landon, there's not a lot that we gain from these other than maybe a couple of injury nuggets or stuff like that, but I don't think we're going to get much here. But let's jump into the safeties, which is a very, very interesting position for the Cowboys because I don't know what to expect. So as a whole, what do you think about this unit?
Well, good news first, and this is what I was talking to you about, is I think that the position has immediately a much better floor, I feel like, this year than it did last year. Kind of coming into the year, I feel like the worst case scenario for the Cowboys safety position doesn't look as bad as it possibly could be. It could have been last year, for sure. I think with, at the very least, some combination of DeMonte KZ and Donovan Wilson and maybe even Keanu Neal if you wanted to throw him into that mix, and we'll talk about that later. I think that gives you a stable, decent floor, maybe slightly below average, maybe at average, if worst case scenario happens, right? So that's I know that doesn't seem like a very reassuring, but when we're talking about a position that we have all been very concerned about for years, and obviously is on our list of positions to be worried about coming into this year, that's the good news, is that it does seem like that they have improved at that position. The question is how much, and not a ton is known at this point. And that's the bad news, right? Is that there is almost as much unknown in this position group as there is at the cornerbacks. So I think that's kind of the 10,000 foot view. And then we have to kind of look at the individual players to see exactly, who's likely to take a step, who's going to be the starting guy, who's the dark horses, and all the kind of things that we went through with the cornerback position as well.
I'll just start with this. I feel like they're a guy short at safety. Like, I feel like they're a third safety short is, I guess, the best way to put it. Like, for example, if Xavier Woods was still on this team, and I know we've had our ups and downs with Xavier Woods, I would feel a lot better about the unit with KZ, Donovan Wilson, and Xavier Woods. I feel like that's three guys that you could, mix and match. The problem is with KZ, I mean, he keeps telling us that he's healthy, but we'll see what he looks like when he's on the field and if he can stay healthy. Donovan Wilson sounds like he hasn't done anything this offseason. Like, he hasn't been really involved in much of the OTAs. I know he really hasn't been at the facility a ton working out. So where is he at going into year 3? And, I mean, he's still somewhat of an unknown player. I just wish they had another guy. I wish there was somebody available that they could go get. But I don't think they have that option right now, Lana.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, when I said that the floor was better, I don't think that they're happy with things are, for sure. I think they're still hoping that one or two players from this group that we're going to talk about, emerge as, at the very least, options to play on the field regularly as part of a rotation. but hopefully one or two of these guys emerges as a real player at the position, and Wilson is part of that group, and I think
let's just have a Wilson discussion. Let's have the Wilson discussion right now, because I think he's maybe one of the biggest wild cards on defense, right? Because
absolutely.
When he's playing and playing well, he's a really, really good player. The problem is I think he can be a little bit inconsistent in how healthy he is. And does Dan Quinn believe he can be the strong safety of this team? I think those are all legitimate questions.
Yeah, I mean, I think he, should be considered at free safety too. I mean, I think that's where he played a majority of his snaps last year. But I think you've mentioned it's consistency is the thing. Look, he is to me the Trayvon Diggs of this group, right? The guy who you have kind of the most hope for as far as top end where he can go. But the difference between him and Trayvon Diggs is that I feel a lot more confident that Trayvon Diggs is going to come in with a higher floor. I
agree.
I don't know exactly. Based on the reports that we've seen, based on what you just mentioned, we don't really know what Donovan Wilson is. We saw what he was at the end of the year, and we're excited by that. And I think his trajectory was extremely similar to Trayvon Diggs in the sense that towards the end of the year, he was really, really playing good football. And it was playing good enough football that you were excited about his future. But you mentioned it. He wasn't around the facility a lot. I don't know if that means that he wasn't working out a lot or if he was just not part of the Cowboys offseason. And I think we'll probably find out a little bit more once we get into training camp practices for sure. But I would say that he's the guy that, has an incredibly large spectrum of where he can land this year. But he's also the guy that you're hoping for to take a big step and potentially be, maybe a star at the position. I mean, he certainly was the bright spot, or at least one of the biggest bright spots on this defense last year.
So this is what I'm going to say about Donovan Wilson, about some of the offseason stuff. So Dak Prescott has been very vocal and has wanted players to come to his backyard and work out. And they've actually had an amazing turnout. Wilson wasn't one of those players, and that's fine. Like he's not under an obligation to be there, right?
Yeah.
But when you combine that with the fact that I don't think he really did much in mini camps and OTAs, you're just left wondering, okay, is he hurt? Is he not in shape, and that's why he can't participate in OTAs, or is something else going on? I have no idea. It's just something worth monitoring. But again, if he hits, I think that the entire ceiling of this defense rises, because I do think he's got the chance to be, of all the safeties we're going to talk about, he's got the chance to be the biggest game changer of them all.
He's a volatile playmaker.
Yeah.
And I think that volatility extends to his consistency, unfortunately.
I agree.
And I think that, he needed to have a good offseason to kind of stabilize his play a little bit to make him a more viable player. Look, we had a whole conversation with our buddy Joey Ikes about him. And Joey, as an A&M guy, obviously loves Wilson.
Sure.
And listen, we've been big Wilson fans since before.
Yes, we are. We still are.
Like, we still are. But as there's been more exposed in there, we started to see there may be a reason that he didn't get a chance to get out on the field to be there consistently, because he's not necessarily always reliable.
Mm-hmm. We talk about drum beats a lot, like in the positive way. Well, like Nahshon Wright, who we talked about on Monday's show, right? Like Nahshon Wright has been having a really good offseason.
Yeah.
We really haven't heard anything on Donovan Wilson. Not really a single story other than, hey, he's not practicing today.
And this is the guy we should have been listening for too, right? Because of the way he played at the end of the year, because of the way that he performed. We're interested to see how he improves this year, because we were expecting a big jump. If he took this offseason off, or if he, just kind of took his foot off the gas a little bit because he felt like he was the starter, maybe that's problematic. That's not good.
There was one other defensive back that wasn't at Dak's or in Dak's backyard working out this offseason. I'll let you wonder who that is. We'll talk about it off show. Boss man that. All right, let's take a quick break so I can tell you guys about Bet Online, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action. Baseball season is in full swing, and you can track all of the action on Bet Online before the next pitch. Head over to Bet Online on your laptop or mobile device and check out all the great sporting news, sign-up bonuses, and contest information. Don't sit on the sidelines anymore, as this is your chance to get into the game as teams prep for their runs to the playoffs. head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, your online sportsbook experts. All right, Landon, let's talk about KZ because the Cowboys are really relying on him to be the free safety. We've seen what he can do when he's healthy. He's a turnover machine. But how much do you trust that he can actually stay on the field?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question. I mean, there's obviously a pretty serious injury he suffered. I think it was week 4 or 5 of last year. And to say that we were surprised to hear that he was 100% healthy when that claim got made was surprising is an understatement. I mean, I think, it's a little bit quick. I mean, it's possible. It's not certainly outside the realm of possibility. We've seen, these injuries come back that quick. It's a little bit surprising. So I think, we all need some prove it here. We none of us are Atlanta Falcons fans. We know of what he did there. We've watched tape of what he's done there, but he hasn't built up any kind of I don't want to say trust, but we don't have anything to kind of hold on to for him as a player yet because we haven't seen him play. So I think that there's definitely I think it was a good signing, and because he is a guy that could potentially we could look back and go, wow, that was a much better signing than we imagined it was at the time. Just simply because he's a competent free safety who can play the position, and if he is healthy, maybe he isn't the guy who gets 7 interceptions like he was a couple years ago, but at the very least can provide a stable, smart safety that can stop the bleeding. And I think that's incredibly important and necessary in with this defensive backfield.
So a couple things on KZ. First and foremost, before the Achilles injury, he played every single game in the first 3 years of his career. So he has been durable that way. He is smaller, and he just turned 28 this offseason. So you typically do worry about these guys that have Achilles injuries. Like, does it take them 2 years to be fully back? We shall see. But if KZ plays the way he did 2018, 2019, even as a rookie in 2017, he can be the best Cowboys free safety since Ken Hamlin?
Matt Johnson on practice field?
Justin Berri?
Oh man,
that's going way back. I mean, that's the thing. Is like if he's healthy, he can be a real difference maker. It's just how quickly is he going to be over this Achilles injury? Did he lose the quickness? Did he lose the twitch? Because if you did at 175 pounds, that's going to be a little problematic. All right, Landon, my next question for you: who is the third safety on this team?
That's a fantastic question. I think any one of the guys that we've named already could easily be that third safety if someone underneath kind of really takes a step forward. I think that Jaron Kearse is likely to have a role on defense.
That's so disappointing.
I think if you can play him in a correct role, I think you can get value out of a guy like Jaron Kearse. Get valuable snaps. I think he can also be a good special teams player.
You think he's a better player than Darian Thompson?
Yes, I do. Because I think that Darian Thompson, is a guy. I think Kearse can actually be a guy who can make plays as a box player. I don't think Kearse is better than Thompson as playing free safety. Mostly because I haven't seen Kearse play a bunch of free safety. You see Kearse play a ton of slot corner, which was interesting. And then he really only started playing box safety like last year. Yeah. So, I think that there's some untapped potential there, especially when you consider the fact that he's, just hasn't played a lot of defensive football. And as he has played, he seemingly has gotten better. But I'm not relying on him. I'm not, saying that I think he's definitely going to be that. But I do think that I would not be surprised if they got in there, put him at box full time in this defense, and were pleasantly surprised with what they saw in his ability to kind of move around at that position.
I'm just not a Kearse guy. Like when I watched him in Detroit, he just. I don't know. He's somebody who is very athletic. He's got the size. It just seems like he doesn't have a great feel for the game. And I think the Cowboys know that. And I think they signed him to be really more of a special teams guy who has some experience at safety. But if he's your third safety, I am a bit concerned. I will be interested to see, like, does Darian Thompson beat him out? Because it's pretty clear somebody on this coaching staff in the front office likes them some Darian Thompson. I don't know what it is. I don't see it. But is there anything that you can kind of hang your hat on when it comes to Darian Thompson?
Not really. I've seen him play.
I don't get it either, man. I don't get it.
He's because he's a smart player and he probably practices very well because of that. I guarantee you that's what it is, and that's usually the case when we see these guys that are like, they're like, why is this guy on the field? It's probably because they practice really, really incredibly well, and then they just can't turn it on when the lights come on. Look, I'm not rooting for Kearse to be safety 3. I'm rooting for someone like McCool or for.
We're going to talk about McCool, don't you?
Those guys to kind of come up and take some of those jobs and push other people's jobs down.
So we talked about Jordan Lewis on the Monday show about him potentially playing some safety. What's the right number of snaps for Jordan Lewis at safety again, and in a game, and where do you want him to play?
I think it's a week to week thing, right? It's a matchup based thing. If you find like there's packages that you want to deploy him in kind of a safety spot, probably 10 to 15 snaps at that spot. I mean, I don't want Jordan Lewis getting more than 30 snaps a game anyways, right? Like, so
yeah, I almost think like 10 snaps at safety depending on the matchup. And to be honest, I almost would say depending on the running back. Like, I think that's the answer, right? Because we've seen him against like Alvin Kamara. Like, he's very good in that type of role. But if you're going up against a team that doesn't necessarily have like a pass catching running back, I don't know if I want him on the field. Like, example, Landon, week 2, the Cowboys play the Chargers. They're going to be playing Austin Eckler. I want him on the field covering Austin Eckler rather than Donovan Wilson. I just do.
Yeah, and I think that's the kind of way that he'll get deployed, right? Is in a matchup-based situation. And look, I whether we're calling him a safety or a nickel corner, his job might be so specific that the position title may not matter. Right. It's like, go out and cover this running back when he comes out. Or green dog, basically, right? Cover him if he comes out, blitz if he doesn't, right? Like, that's the kind of thing I trust Jordan Lewis to do well.
More than any of the other safeties in the roster, to be honest.
Probably, yeah. I mean, I haven't really watched Keanu Neal do any of that yet, but I mean, again, he's more. Is he a linebacker? What's going on there? So
he looks like he's about 230 pounds now. I don't think
he
that's
definitely has.
Cool.
The pictures we've seen of him, he looks bigger than he did previously. So he may just be a full-time linebacker at this point.
All right, I want to talk about some of the young safeties on this team in just a second, but let me tell you guys about Built Bar. Built Bar is the absolute best tasting protein bar out there. I almost will guarantee you Keanu Neal has been eating them this offseason. They're so good. It's hard to even explain it. Real chocolate, amazing flavors. It's just a great combination of low calories, high protein, and low sugar with no crazy additives. Best of all, they taste fantastic. Go to BuiltBar.com and use promo code LOCKEDON, and you'll get 15% off your next box at BuiltBar.com. All right, Landon, let's talk about Izzy Mukuamu, the safety the Cowboys took in the the 6th round from South Carolina. Who do you believe will be inducting him into the Hall of Fame? I like Mukuamu. I think he's a good player.
Apparently it's you that's going to be
not a safety, though. He's a corner. I don't know why they're playing him at free safety. We tried this with Patrick Watkins. It didn't work.
Yeah, I mean, I think my note to you was that is he going to be the next Reggie Robinson? And I hope not. I hope not. Look, I liked him as a corner as well. I thought that when watching Horn tape, he really kind of stood out. And sometimes again, it's that technique. And I think I've talked to you about it. Sometimes I like to turn the games on and see if I could just identify the player without knowing what their number is or whatever. Yeah. And Izzy got me a couple times where it was Izzy, not Horn, that I was watching and thinking that was Horn, right? Mm-hmm. And that's an extreme compliment to Izzy, not anything against Horn. So they clearly see something there at safety that they like.
Well, he does have some experience doing it. It's not like he's completely changing positions because South Carolina did move him around.
Yeah, and look, if he could play safety, having a guy that can cover like him as a safety, that'd be
especially as the free safety spot, which is kind of where I think they're going to play him. Like, if you get a 6'4" guy that can move back there, you're going to cover up a lot of throwing windows.
Yes, exactly. I think, for me, I would love to see him kind of have a role, maybe doing a little bit of both, and maybe kind of being an inside outside guy. And maybe you could afford a little bit more of that when you have guys like Jordan Lewis, who are kind of fluid, right? Like you have a guy at the end of your cornerback roster who can play safety, and the guy at the end of your safety roster who can play cornerback, and it just gives you position flex in case there's injuries in game, So I'm a big fan. He's one of the guys that I'm really excited about to see exactly how it pans out. I have real concerns that they're not. I hope that they don't end up treating him like Reggie Robinson. I will say that Quinn does have success doing this, right? Mm-hmm. Converting these corners into safeties. Obviously Kazee is an example. Mm-hmm. Earl Thomas is another example. Yeah. I mean, it was mostly a cornerback in Texas. So
what's funny is it's typically the smaller guys, like these sub.
Yeah, it is. That's the difference.
Guys. And this guy's like 215 pounds.
Yeah, that's the difference there, is that this guy is actually safety sized, right? Yeah. So, I agree. I think he's got something there. I'm interested to see what they see in him as a safety, and I'm sure we'll find out. But at the very least, I think, if it doesn't work out, you could very quickly convert him back, and I think he'll be a corner that could, compete for a roster spot and potentially be a good developmental guy down the road.
Yeah, because I'll be honest, like when I watched the tape of like Nahshon Wright against Izzy playing corner, I kind of think Izzy was the better corner prospect, right? I mean, obviously Nahshon has had it sounds like a better offseason so far, but Mukamu was pretty good in the SEC. He had his troubles when he got matched up against Kyle Pitts, but hey, who didn't?
Who didn't? I mean, Patrick Surtain had his problems against I will say this. We definitely had a lot more tape of Mukamu playing corner than we did Nahshon Wright. It was tough to find Nahshon Wright tape after he got drafted. So I definitely don't disagree with you. I think that
I don't think you're wrong. It was hard. It was harder to find a lot of Nate. Well, not only the Pac-12 just didn't play as many games this year. That was the other problem,
and that's part of it, right? And I think what you're saying about Mukamu is right. His cornerback tape is probably, at least what we've seen, is better than Wright. But with the caveat that there's less of it and it's a lot harder to find.
So the last guy that I want to mention, basically, if you decide to fade, or the Cowboys decide to fade Donovan Wilson a little bit, there's got to be somebody else who you like to come in and play that strong safety role. And the Cowboys did sign a very interesting undrafted free agent this year, and Tyler Coyle from Purdue. The size is phenomenal, right? 6 foot, 210 pounds, ran a 4.41, had production at Purdue. Is this a guy that could potentially make the 53-man roster this season?
I don't know. Are we getting Tyler Coyle from Purdue, or are we getting Tyler Coyle from UConn? Because if we get Tyler Coyle from his previous stop, I think we may have something here. There was a lot of talk when we first signed him that maybe they would move him to linebacker. But I think he could be a really good safety candidate, and I think he's a guy that probably suffered from his transfer, right? Probably took a little bit of a step back, his last year in college, from his trajectory, his quite impressive trajectory his first few years at UConn. And he was being loyal. If I remember correctly, I think he was following his defensive coordinator who moved from UConn to Purdue. So, this is guys like this, and this, Marcus, guys like this are guys who we should watch, right? Because they have an untraditional way that they came into the NFL. Guys like this are the guys that are likely to be missed, right? Yes. Are likely to be just not discovered because, there's circumstance involved in the way he played this year, including a late transfer, just a completely different level of play, a completely different team, completely different defense. So I think that, Coyle is a guy when you watch his tape, when you see the skills that he has, the athleticism, he seems seemingly a pretty smart player too. You kind of watch and you go, well, what happened here? Why did this guy go undrafted? And a lot of it has to do with like the circumstance of just being, we talk about that drum beat, right? It's hard to get a drum beat for your candidacy as a prospect when you've kind of been dealing with a lot of disruption, moving colleges, moving conferences. it's hard to kind of build that candidacy as a top draft prospect if there's a lot of fluctuation going on. So what that means is that you could be finding a guy who may be a much better NFL player than he was in college, but we'll see when he gets in here. His athleticism is certainly going to get him an opportunity to maybe at the very least be a special teams contributor. Yeah,
I mean, you talked about the athleticism. According to the relative athletic scoring, tested as a 9.99 out of 10. Not bad, not bad. So he's one of those guys that, if he can make a few plays on special teams in practice and in the preseason, maybe he is a guy that you decide to keep over Jaron Kearse or Darian Thompson because he's just too good of an athlete to subject him to the waiver wire. Keep an eye on Tyler Coyle as we get into the preseason games. Preseason games, Landon, coming up in 2 weeks. Cowboys Steelers Hall of Fame game. Should be a lot of fun.
Yes, it should. Yeah, I was going to say your favorite team and the team that you cover. I mean, it's just kind of a redo of what we were hoping to get last year, but now we're finally going to get it. So it should be an interesting game just to see all these young people playing football.
Well, do you know what's funny? As I was thinking about this today, is not only are we going to be able to see like the rookie class from this year, but there's a handful of guys that we didn't get to see at all last year.
Reggie Robinson. We have never seen Reggie Robinson really play cornerback.
Yeah, I mean, Reggie Robinson, Bradley, and I only played 7 snaps, something last year. There's a bunch of undrafted free agent receivers like Aaron Parker, who they signed last year, who I like quite a bit. Sean McEwen, even a little bit. So basically like 2 draft classes that we'll get to see for the first time in that first Hall of Fame game. Should be a lot of fun. That is it for today's show. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, you can download and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Continue to support us on YouTube. You can follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. You can follow the show at Locked On Cowboys. And I'm at Marcus_Mosher.